In the next couple of videos, I will discuss the subject of Sanyasi and a yogi, terms that we use frequently but often not understood. I will focus on the definition and difference between a sannyasi and a yogi, and the characteristics of a yogi, and more importantly, how can one become a yogi? You can be who you are going on with your daily work, but still become a yogi. I'm focusing more on the life of a yogi for three simple reasons. Being a yogi is an elevated state in the journey of an individual. We all in our daily lives can definitely aspire and become a yogi. And lastly, the third reason, the Gita clearly says any day the yogi is superior to a sannyasi or an ascetic. With that context, let's get going. Let us first quickly cover the meaning of a sannyasi. You see, a sannyasi is a person who has renounced works of desire and greed. That is the ideal definition. Other than the minimal regular work needed to keep this body functioning, there is not an explicit pursuit of work by the sannyasi. The focus of a sannyasi is on being established in the yoga of knowledge, meaning the precepts, the components of a meaningful life, and what makes up a purposeful life, all surrounded in a life of dharma or righteousness. The focus here is that sannyasi is towards continued renunciation. Now look at a yogi. A yogi not only focuses on the minimal regular work needed to keep this body functioning, but also on works that are in pursuit of various goals, like you and I. These are the same goals that help the society. Do something good for the community. Create prosperity for the individual self and family. A yogi is focused on action. The key differentiation between a yogi and any other non-yogi or individual is that the yogi considers every activity to be the means and the end, and very importantly, practices detachment. Through detachment, the yogi follows the path of righteous action. Thus, unlike a sannyasi, a yogi is not explicitly focused on the yoga of righteous knowledge or even mastering the scriptures. But just through the actions, a yogi has the yoga of knowledge embedded. A yogi does not put any special effort to learn the yoga of knowledge, since that wisdom is demonstrated through the way the life is led and through actual practice. You can say a yogi has direct experiential understanding of the true nature of life itself or the real self. Selfish interest and motivation are not at all the trait of a yogi. My friends, for an individual to become a yogi, activity is the means. For an individual to become a sannyasi, renunciation is the means. Krishna says, a yogi is any day superior to a sannyasi. Remember that. The great philosopher Bhagavad Ramanuja says it brilliantly. You can describe a person as rich not because of the wealth in lockers, but the life of peace and contentment the person leads. Hoarding of wealth has no meaning for a person of contentment. A yogi has similar traits. He or she does not hoard theoretical and scriptural knowledge. Instead, a yogi demonstrates maturity through the very living of a righteous life. There are two main actions the yogi executes on a daily basis. Number one, yogi follows a meditative path. And number two, the yogi practices moderation. Let us look at both of these characteristics. The great philosopher Acharya Madhva says, relinquishing thoughts and attachments to sense objects, you enter a state of realization of all being under the control of a divine energy. In that stage, you have reached the goal of a meditative path. And that is precisely what one of the characteristics of a yogi is, focusing on meditation. As the yogi focuses on the self and the supreme and becomes aware of the incomparable and priceless enjoyment, tranquility deepens to make the yogi remain detached and desireless. The person is in a practical meditative state even through the daily operations. Even while doing regular work, the energy of a yogi is channeled towards self-inquiry and directed to the divine. Krishna in the Gita compares a meditative state to a bright lamp in a windless place. The lamp remains steady without a flicker. It emits light all around and dispels darkness and ignorance. In a meditative state, love and devotion is the only thing that remains. The characteristics and activities of such a person is in many ways termed as archana or to honor. Let's look at the second trait of a yogi, moderation. How does the yogi practice moderation? Moderation by its very nature requires restraint. When restraint is by choice and not force, then the individual develops the ability to control senses and attachments to sense objects. Think about it like a tortoise pulling itself into a shelf. Similarly, the yogi pulls herself or himself internally. Like a bird flying in all directions and then coming to rest on the perch, the yogi brings all the sense organs to rest. Physically, the yogi is present, but spiritually, the yogi has pulled back like a tortoise. Like the fragrance of a perfume and the ambers from an incense stick filling the room, the yogi's mental and physical state will be saturated with unalloyed, unadulterated, and unperturbed happiness. At regular intervals of the day, the yogi makes an explicit effort to pull into the shelf while still engaged in the world. The yogi actually goes through a gradual process to do this, to pull internally. First thing is, the yogi settles in a proper posture, could be on a chair, and the yogi prepares for a meditative state by sending subtle commands to the intellect to take on the reins and be in control. The intellect then controls and takes over the command of the brain and starts disengaging the sense organs from the sense objects one after the other. This disengagement happens sequentially. Again, one sense organ at a time. After all the sense organs are disengaged, the yogi goes into a blissful and tranquil state. My friends, this blissful and tranquil state cannot be described but only experienced, and it is called the yogic state. In a yogic state, an internal cleansing begins. This cleansing eradicates any type of indecisiveness, lack of mental peace, or agony. Many broadly label these things as sins. When sins get destroyed, the undesirable material modes of passion, or rajas as it is called, and ignorance, or tamas as it is called, gets destroyed. When Rajas and Tamas get destroyed, all that remains is purity, or called Sattva. The yogi can come out of the yogic state at will by letting each sense organ engage back in this world. It is like reverse osmosis. Even after a yogi comes out of the yogic state, the individual is continuously in a tranquil and blissful state. Very important, the characteristics of the yogic state keep rising to the surface and radiate through the yogi and everyone around him or her. The radiance emanates from the face and the body. The persona of a yogi becomes a magnet in attracting others. The face shines, a sense of calm prevails. The voice becomes soothing and melodious. Anxiety takes a back seat. In the yogic state, profound sorrow shies away from even coming closer. It shies away from making an appearance and bows down to the resolute powers of the yogi's intellect. The yogic state is the purest form an individual can ever experience. Reflect on your own life. Even if you're not at the spiritual level of a yogi, can you not get into the zone and become a yogi as described by Krishna? Before I close, I would like to answer a very important question that I have received. Can you ever become a yogi if you are still caught in the quagmire of thinking that the body is real you? Well, never, says the Krishna and the Gita. To become a yogi, the first step is to remember the body is like your car and the real you is the fuel that powers it. With this learning, when possible, get into the zone of relinquishing thoughts and attachments to enter a state of realization. Remember, the efforts and the effects are cumulative. It's not an all or nothing. The effort you put in today continues and starts building on it. Get started today. There's no reason to delay. Stay blessed, and I'll talk to you soon.